Welcome to Pokemon Emerald. Often considered by many to be one of the best games in the series, the great balance between variety of Pokemon, pacing, difficulty, and storyline, Emerald has become the definitive way to experience the Hoenn region. So I figured, why not Nuzlocke it? If you don't know, Nuzlocking provides a more challenging way to play Pokemon games which are usually quite easy, with the rules being as follows. Catch only the first Pokemon of each route, any Pokemon that faints is considered dead, no in-game items but held items are allowed, and no over-leveling past the current gym leader's highest level Pokemon. With that being said, this is my playthrough of Pokemon Emerald. For my first Pokemon, I decided to go with Mudkip, who has the best typing out of the three and has a clear advantage over many gyms in the game. I named him Kip. My next encounter was a Poochyena named Sam, after my dog Samson. My third encounter was a Wingull, which I named... Mine! The next Pokemon I caught was a Lotad. I named him Tad.
Boo! You suck!
I then caught a Marill, which I named Peekaboo. My next encounter is a Cascoon. I name him Dusty. Immediately after, I catch a Tailo and name him Swallow. I then evolve Dusty into Dustox. Right after that, I catch a Nincada, and then I just name him Cicada because I couldn't think of a name.
I'm an idiot! You're an idiot! Alright, bye.
Next up is Roxanne, and we just use Water Gun to take out all three of her Pokemon. I didn't even have to switch out, like, not even one time. She's definitely one of the easiest gym leaders in the entire game. Right after the battle, we then evolve Kip to a Marshtomp. Our next battle is with May, and Marshtomp cleared Wingull, which then baited into Trico, who we easily take out with a Wingull of our own. We then land outside Dewford, where I'm able to catch a Magikarp. I named him Magic. Immediately after catching him, I also caught a Tentacool, and I named him Anime. And finally, in Dewford Cave, I caught an Aron. I named him...
Where is Aaron right now?
Immediately after, we finally evolved Poochyena into a Mightyena. Next up is Brawley, the fighting type gym leader. We use Wingull to take out his first two Pokemon and then switch into Dustox, which is able to take out Makuhita after a few confusions, winning us the battle. Right after, I caught an Electrike and named him Tyke. The next battle in this is with May. She leads with Wingull, so I kill her with Rock Tomb, and then I bait in her Grovyle, so I switch into Dusty to take it out. Her final Pokemon is a Slugma, and so we just switch to our Wingull and then take it out with Water Gun. Next up is Watson. He leads with Voltorb while I lead with Kip. I use Mudshot and I'm easily able to take it out on the first turn. He then tries to pivot into Electrike, but I also just take it out in one shot. He then tries to switch into Magneton, and I also just take that out with one shot as well. His final Pokemon is Manectric, and I just crit him and kill him. So I didn't even have to switch for that battle either. My next encounter was an Oddish, which I named Dish TV. I then caught a Numel, and I named him Erupt. Then a Machop named Champ, and a Spinda, which I forgot to name, and a Swablu named Cotton. I also caught a Zubat and named him Batman.
Are there any original ideas left? Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 cliches everybody hates.
Next up is the first big roadblock, in my opinion, and it's actually Maxie. So he sends his Mightyena, which actually ends up getting a crit on me, so I'm forced to switch out into Gyarados and then into Sam to finally take it out after pivoting into two other Pokemon. I then am able to crit his Zubat though, and then finally switch into Kip, which can easily tank a Magnitude for Camera Up since it has pretty low attack, and then I just one-shot it with Water Gun. Next up is Flannery. She leads with Numel and I lead with Anime, and I just go for a Bubble Beam, which easily is able to take it out in one shot. She then pivots into her Slugma, and I just barely miss out on the kill, so she's able to set up a Sunny Day, which really sucks. I then just use Bubble Beam a couple more times to take it out. I then decided to stay in on Camera Up and just go for Bubble Beam, and it surprisingly worked, but I think it only worked because Camera Up didn't have any ground moves. She then sends in her final Pokemon, Torkoal, which is definitely the strongest Pokemon on her team by far. I didn't really have an answer for it, so I kind of just whittled it down with Gyarados and risked a crit death, and then finally pivoted into Kip to take it out with a Water Gun. Right after, Anime also evolved into a Tentacruel. Our next fight is Norman, so I decided to evolve Champ into a Macho. I lead with Champ and then am instantly able to KO Spinda, which then bases in his Vigor off, so I switch into Magic to get an Intimidate off, then I just use Dragon Rage, and then I decide to pivot into Sam to get another Intimidate off, but then I end up getting crit by Slash and getting destroyed, so I'm forced to switch into Tentacool to outspeed and then get the KO. Norman then sends in Linoone, and I'm able to outspeed and barely just kill it. He finally sends in Slacking, which can be a bit scary, but since it has Truant as his ability, I just switch into Dusty US Protect, and then I pivot into Machamp once to hit it with Low Kick, which nearly kills, but not quite. So I just do the same process over again, but this time with Gyarados, and am able to barely hang on at 17 HP and take it out with a Low Kick. I caught a Linoone and named him No One. This Pokemon is going to be extremely useful later. Then caught a Kecleon and named him Chameleon. Next up is Winona. He leads with Swablu while I lead with Tyke. Then go for a Thunderbolt and I easily take her out in one hit. He then sends in Altaria, so then I switch into Magic to get an Intimidate off because I know she's going to Dragon Dance. I then go for Dragon Rage to get some decent damage. I then use it again because I know Altaria can't really kill me in one shot, so I just use it 3 times for the KO. She then sends in Tropius, so I switch into Swallow, but Tropius just uses Solar Beam, which fucking sucks. So, I mean, it's pretty much a free kill after this. He did crit me, but Swellow just takes it out the next turn anyway, so it doesn't really matter. He then sends in her Pelipper, so I switch back into Type, but then he confuses me. I risk it and go for the Thunderbolt, but she went for Protect anyways, and I hit myself with Confusion, so it wouldn't have mattered. He then goes for another Protect as I switch into Kip.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And then I hurt myself in Confusion again on the next turn. And I finally switch back into Type, and it fails to Protect, and I finally one-hit KO it with Thunderbolt. The Pelipper was so fucking annoying. He then sends in her last Pokemon, and I easily destroy it, winning us the battle. I caught a Gloom, then I named it Toad. I then caught a Shuppet, and then I just named that Puppet.
I'll have a Krabby Patty.
How original.
Our next trainer is actually May. We lead with Kip and she leads with Tropius, so I actually just switch into Swallow, then go for a Wing Attack to get it to around half health. But she just goes for Sweet Scent, so I just go for another Wing Attack, which does manage to take out Tropius. May then sends in Slugma, and I figured it might have like a rock move or something, so I switch into Anime, but he just goes for Harden, so I just take it out with Surf the next turn. May then sends in her Pelipper, so I just switch into Type, who I thought could take a move, but she just goes for Protect for some reason twice in a row, so I just kill her with one shot on the next turn. The final Pokemon is a Grovyle, and he just goes for Leaf Blade, and I use Wing Attack, which actually managed to one-hit KO. I was kind of surprised by that, I'm not gonna lie. And then Kip evolved into Swampert right after the battle. I then caught a Duskull, and immediately evolved it into Dusclops because I thought I would need it for Tate and Liza. This is definitely one of the hardest fights in the game, at least for me personally. Maybe it's because it's a double battle, I'm not sure, but it was extremely difficult for me. Led with Gyarados and Banette, I also taught Shadow Ball to counter Claydol, who I thought was a really big threat to my team. I also taught Surf to Gyarados, which I thought would be useful to get some chip damage, as 3/4 of their Pokemon would be weak to water. We did manage to tank out Claydol, then we got traded by a +1 Xatu, which forced me to send an Electrode. I then went for Spark, which did super mediocre damage, but we luckily got saved by a Super Clutch Paralysis. Unfortunately, it uses a Hyper Potion, so we end up losing Electrode anyways after Xatu heals. We then send in a Azumarill, which knows Rollout, who is able to clutch up and finally KO Xatu with a Super Clutch critical hit, but unfortunately, I didn't have a switch in for a Psychic move, so I had to sack Azumarill as well. Then finally send in Dusclops, and with Gyarados, they both managed to take out Solrock and Lunatone. So this next battle is actually a double battle with Steven. I chose to lead with Gyarados, and he chose to lead with Batang. On turn 1, I just go for Surf, which easily KOs the Camerupt, and then does some chip damage on Mightyena. Maxie then sends in Golbat, and then I go for another Surf, but unfortunately I get confused. Batang does nearly take out Golbat though. I then switch into Kip, but then I just get confused again by Confuse Ray, so I just decided to say fuck it, and I went for a Surf, but I didn't actually get it off. I just hit myself with Confusion again. Maxie then sends in his Crobat, and then I switch into my Gyarados to get the Intimidate off because I'm not sure how strong Crobat is. Batang does manage to finish off Golbat though, which does bait in Mightyena, lowering Gyarados' attack as well. Which doesn't really matter since in this game I'm just mostly using special attacks anyways. And Batang actually destroys Crobat. I have no idea how it killed him with Metal Claw. But Batang then also takes out Mightyena as well. And then I use Surf to easily take out Camerupt, winning us the battle. Next up is Juan, and before I fight him, I wanted to evolve Lotad, but after leveling it up into a Lombre, I found a blue shard and then traded it for a water stone to get Ludicolo. Juan leads with Love Disc and I lead with Ludicolo, and then first turn I actually just go for a Fake Out. Second turn he goes for a Sweet Kiss, and thank God he misses, and then I just go for a Bullet Seed and actually manage to take it out because I hit 4 times, which is kind of lucky. Juan then tries to retaliate with Wish Cash, and then I just go for a Bullet Seed. He then goes for Earthquake, which does pretty much next to nothing. And then next turn I go for Bullet Seed, but unfortunately only hit 2 times, so I don't get the kill. Juan then uses Rain Dance, and then uses a Hyper Potion, which is really fucking annoying. So I just keep spamming Bullet Seed until I manage to KO it. Juan then sends in his third Pokemon, Helio. I just stay in and go for a Bullet Seed, and I actually managed to hit 5 times in a row. I then go for another Bullet Seed, but unfortunately I don't get the KO because I only hit twice. But next turn, after getting hit with another Aurora Beam, I'm able to take it out. For Juan's strongest Pokemon by far is definitely his Kingdra. This Pokemon gave me a lot of trouble because it has a really good typing, and I wasn't sure what I could do to fight it. I decided to switch into Gyarados though, to get an Intimidate off, thinking that his Kingdra would be physical, but this is Gen 3, and he just hits me with an Ice Beam for a decent amount of damage. I then switch into Dusclops, which does manage to take a Water Pulse, and then I unfortunately hit myself. I finally am able to get a Will-O-Wisp off with Dusclops though, and then after getting the Will-O-Wisp off, switch into Kip, and then use Earthquake, which after the burn, actually manages to take out Kingdra. I then go for Earthquake on Crawdon, which nearly kills, and Crawdon just used Taunt, so the next turn I'm just able to outspeed and kill it. That Kingdra was super fucking scary. I almost choked that. The next trainer is Wally. I didn't show any of his earlier fights because he's honestly just a really weak trainer in general in these games, so this is the only one I decided to show. He leads with Altaria and goes for Dragon Dance, and I lead with Ludicolo, so I'm forced to switch into Magic, which does manage to get an Intimidate off, canceling out the Dragon Dance. I then decide to switch into Kip because Switch has Rock Tomb, and Altaria just goes for another Dragon Dance. I get Altaria to around half HP, but I know I can't kill it with another Rock Tomb. I just decided to go for it anyways though because it's gonna lower its speed, and Wally just goes for a full restore. I then just decided to spam Rock Tomb because I know I'm gonna outspeed, and as long as I don't miss, I know I can KO Altaria. So I just go for Strength instead to finish it off. This then baits in Wally's Roselia, so I switch into Swallow to take the Grass move. I then use Fly, and then on the second turn manage to KO Roselia in one shot. Wally then decides to pivot into Magneton, so I switch into Kip baiting the electric move. I then go for the Earthquake, which obviously one-hit KOs Magneton. Wally then sends in Delcatty. I don't really know what it can do, so I just switch into Gyarados just to make sure I get her attack lower, and thank god I did because Delcatty actually has Magical Leaf. I did not know it could get that move. Wally then tries to set up a Calm Mind next turn, but I just kill it with a couple surfs. His final Pokemon is a Gardevoir, and since in this game he doesn't have Fairy typing, I go for Bite, but I realize it's not doing any damage, so after getting it to around half HP, I go for Hydro Pump, and it manages to crit, which actually ends up killing the Gardevoir. My final catch was actually a Hariyama, which I just caught with a Master Ball, and I named him Saitama. Now on to the Elite Four. I actually have a strat. Way earlier, I actually mentioned that Linoone is an extremely important Pokemon, and this Pokemon is actually what made this run even possible for me. I haven't beaten this game in a very long time, and I've never actually Nuzlocked it before, so I figured I would probably want to use some form of cheese to get through the Elite Four without losing every single Pokemon before I get to the champion. The strat is I just use Belly Drum and Substitute, and then I just check out his entire team with +6/. Next up is Phoebe. He uses mainly Ghost types. So first turn, I think she's guaranteed to use Protect, so I go for a Substitute, and then I go for a Belly Drum. But the problem is, earlier I taught Vanette Shadow Ball. So I tried teaching No One Thief thinking Dark type moves were physical, but they're actually special in this game, which I completely forgot. So I just completely panicked. After some thought, I go into Magic, but Dusclops uses Curse. I then just use Surf to take it out. Phoebe then sends in Banette. I then switch into Swallow, but of course Banette knows Thunderbolt, and I had no idea, so I immediately am one shot and am forced to switch out into Kip. But then Banette just uses Facade. I then just go for Earthquake, which damn near kills Banette, but not quite. Phoebe then uses a full restore, and then I just use Earthquake again, and then Surf to finish it off. I then use Earthquake on her second Banette, and I got it to yellow, so on the next turn I use Surf, but I didn't realize that Grudge actually takes away all your PP, so I end up losing all of my PP on Surf. Phoebe then sends in Sableye, and then I just go for Earthquake, which unfortunately doesn't kill, and then when I try to use Rock Tomb, it misses 2 times in a row. Then Sableye uses Nightshade. I decided to switch into Tyke, and then for some reason I went for Thunder Wave. I have no idea why I did that and just didn't go for Thunderbolt to begin with. Next turn I go for Thunderbolt, and then I go for Thunderbolt 2 more times, but of course I miss. And then on the last turn I just decided to say fuck it because I was so annoyed, and I just go for Thunderbolt and luckily take out Sableye. Phoebe then sends in her final Pokemon, which is just another Dusclops. I didn't really know what to do, so I just sent in Gyarados. I go for Surf on the first turn, then I go for Dive on the second. I'm not really sure why I did that, but I don't know, I thought maybe I could trick the AI into not picking a rock move. I then finally decide to switch into Tad, and then use Surf, which gets the Dusclops to red health, but of course it heals with the Citrus Berry. I then decide to use Bullet Seed, and it does pretty negligible damage as well. And of course Dusclops ends up critting me with a Shadow Ball for taking out Tad. I then am able to trade it out though with a Thunderbolt from Tyke, but that was a really rough battle that I completely sold by not teaching Linoone Shadow Ball instead. Third Elite Four member is Glacia. For her, I pretty much do the exact same strat, and I immediately go for Belly Drum as Celio sets up a Hail. I then just immediately go for Return, which I did end up teaching to my Linoone. I am able to take out Celio, and then I'm able to take out Glalie as well. And then Glacia sends in another Celio, which I also just one-tap. She then sends in another Glalie, and I also just take that out. Her last Pokemon is Walrein, and I know I can't kill it with Return, even at +6, because I don't think Return has enough base damage yet, as I haven't really used Linoone a whole lot. But I decided to switch into Gyarados. And then I use Strength a couple times, but then Walrein ends up fucking busting out Sheer Cold and actually manages to hit it. I then switch into Swallow because I have it poisoned in the back just in case I need to do massive damage, and I just take out Walrein with Facade in the battle. But yeah, that Sheer Cold shit is fucking stupid.
There, Moa, stop your crying. Stop it. Please stop. Stop. Stop it. Stop crying. Stop crying. Stop crying. Stop.
Next up is Drake, who just leads with a Shelgon that knows Protect, and for some reason he always likes to go for Protect, so I use that actually to set up a free substitute, and then I set up my Belly Drum. Shelgon then went for Rock Tomb, which actually didn't destroy my substitute, so I'm able to take out Shelgon for free while maintaining my substitute. Drake then sends in Altaria, and I one-tap that, and then he tries to send in Kingdra, and I immediately destroy it. And then he sends in Flygon, and I wipe the floor with it. And then he finally sends in his Salamence, which actually is able to live, but because my substitute survived earlier, I'm actually able to take it out for free after Drake burns through his full restores. Next up is the champion Wallace. I send in Tyke while he leads with Wailord. I then just go for a Thunderbolt, which does actually manage to take out the Wailord. Wallace then for some reason decides to send in Gyarados, so I just get another free kill on it. He then decides to pivot with Whiscash, and I know I'm baiting a ground move, so I decide to switch into Swallow to dodge the attack. I then go for Facade, and then for some reason Whiscash just goes for Amnesia, so I get a free kill the very next turn. Next up is Tentacruel. I then decide to switch into Kip, baiting an Ice move, and I'm able to tank it fairly well, and then I go for an Earthquake the next turn after taking a massive Hydro Pump. Next up is Ludicolo, which I honestly am pretty scared of, because the only Pokemon that I really have that can touch it is Swallow. I don't think no one would be able to set up on it, and Kip is completely useless against it. I then decide to sack Kip, and then get a free switch into Swallow, and then use Fly, which barely misses out on the KO on Ludicolo, unfortunately. I then switch into Linoon, and then because I know Wallace is going to use a full restore, I choose to use Belly Drum. Then I use Return, which is able to KO it. Wallace's final Pokemon is a Milotic, but since I'm at +6, I'm easily able to one-hit KO it. Wallace basically left my team, and I was hanging by a thread, so I picked a few decent Pokemon that I had left to fight, and was just hoping for a victory at this point. Most notably, I picked out my Ninjask, which has a Speed Boost ability, Double Team, and Swords Dance. This Pokemon plus Hariyama was basically my one chance at beating the next trainer. The true final champion is actually Steven. He leads with Skarmory, and I lead with Type. I go for a Thunderbolt first turn and immediately one-hit KO it, which then baits in his Aggron, which is one of his strongest Pokemon. I go for a Thunder Wave because I know Tyke doesn't really have much use and is completely useless against the rest of his team at this point. The reason I use Thunder Wave is because I need to set up. Then I pivot into Cicada, which even though he's weak to Aggron, I use Double Team, which lowers his accuracy, and I get a speed boost from the ability. Aggron does manage to hit a Thunder, but I also put a Cherry Berry in Cicada just in case that happened. As long as Aggron didn't crit, then I knew I'd be able to survive a Thunder. I then finally switch into Saitama and use a Belly Drum, and actually managed to get it off completely free, with Aggron getting paralyzed the same turn. I then go for Brick Break, and immediately one-hit KO it. Steven then sends in his Armaldo, which is extremely scary, but since I'm at +6, I immediately destroy that with Brick Break as well. Then his scariest Pokemon on his lineup comes out. He sends in Metagross. I use Reversal, and I don't really know why I did that, but it ends up working out anyways because I just used Brick Break to finish it off the next turn without having to worry about any potion shenanigans. Steven then sends in Laydol, which for some reason I thought was ghost typing. I don't really know why. I've already fought it many times before, I just completely forgot. So after realizing that it's not ghost typing, I go for Smelling Salt, and it actually misses its attack on me. So I feel like I got really lucky this battle. Steven does try to use his full restores, but it doesn't really matter, and I'm able to use Smelling Salt to KO Claydol. His final Pokemon is a Cradily. This Pokemon is pretty scary sometimes, but because it has no setup, and I'm at +6, and I have a super effective stab attack, I immediately one-hit KO it, finally beating Pokemon Emerald. Alright guys, so I know this wasn't the best gameplay ever. Like, dude, I literally had 9 deaths. I'm definitely not even close to being the best player ever, but I want to improve as a player and as a creator. If you didn't like anything in the video, please let me know, and if you did like something, please tell me what it is so I can continue to improve on future content. I worked really hard on this video, and I know it's not the best, but I hope it can provide insight for me to make better content. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.